The Viridian Solutions tower breathed concrete and solitude after 8 p.m. Me, Carl, knew every sigh of its air ducts, every thermal creak in its bones, every elongated shadow in the endless granite and smoked glass corridors. Chicago folded itself away outside, a luminous, distant beast, as I started my night rounds, keys jingling at my hip like manacles. Routine was my anchor. Until last Monday, when I found the first coffee. It sat on the immaculate desk in accounting 12th floor. A fine porcelain mug, the kind executives used, filled to the brim with a black liquid sending spirals of steam into the frigid air. The bitter, familiar aroma sliced through the sterile atmosphere. My heart lurched awkwardly. Nobody stayed past 8. The cleaning crew finished at 7. I was the only human soul permitted in that monument to Capitol after sundown. I checked the hallway cameras on my patrol tablet. Grainy black and white footage. Empty. Just the ghostly reflection of emergency lights on the polished floor. And a smudge. A quick distortion, like a cloud of dark smoke, dissolving in the top left corner of the frame, near the back door. An artifact, I thought. Faulty old camera. I poured the coffee down the break room sink, hands slightly trembling. The hot liquid felt like an insult. But the insults kept coming. Tuesday, it was the intern's teddy bear, the one with the patched eye, sitting regally in the CFO's chair, facing the door like it was waiting for an important meeting. Wednesday, all the pens from the marketing department were stabbed vertically into the drop ceiling tiles, forming a grotesque plastic forest 3 meters high. And always, the camera showed only deserted hallways, static shadows, and those fleeting blurs, too fast to focus, always in the corners, always vanishing when I tried to zoom in. As if the building itself was blinking. Loneliness, once a silent companion, became an oppressive presence. Every step I took echoed like a guilty plea down the infinite corridors. I started hearing the voices on Thursday. Muffled, whispering voices, flowing from behind the heavy wooden doors of the 15th floor conference rooms. Not discernible words, but a low, urgent torrent, like the rumble of an underground river or the buzz of a distant swarm. I'd approach, heart pounding against my ribs like a caged bird, press my ear to the cold wood. The sound would cease instantly. Absolute silence. Unlocking the door with a master key, I'd only find expectant darkness and modern furniture, motionless, under the sickly glow of emergency lights. The air smelled of dust and a faint metallic trace, like old copper. Fear took up residence inside me, an unwanted tenant occupying every hollow space. Me, Carl Miller, ex-bus driver who took the night custodian job because of his daughter Laura's medical debts, now felt like an intruder in that labyrinth of glass and steel. My sanity became my prime suspect. Was it sleepless nights? The stress of Laura's situation? Or was something inside the building eating away at me, like slow acid? The shadows on the cameras persisted. I reported it to the day supervisor, Richard. He looked at me with a mix of pity and annoyance, ran a hand over his shiny bald head, and said he'd have maintenance check the cameras. Artifacts. Carl. These old systems. And the fatigue, right? You gotta rest. His look said more plainly crazy. Nobody else saw anything. Just me. Friday brought the Chicago winter deep into my bones. The building seemed to hold an ancestral cold that the heating vents couldn't dispel. On the 2 a.m. round, 18th floor, the executive floor, all dark marble and rare wood paneling, the smell of fresh coffee returned. Stronger. Intoxicating. I followed the aroma like a poison trail to the CEO's suite. The door, always locked, was slightly ajar. A sliver of absolute darkness. My flashlight trembled in my hand, the beam dancing over the thick Persian rug. I pushed the door slowly, its hinges letting out a groan that seemed to tear the silence. The office was vast, a cavern of discreet luxury. And there, on the enormous mahogany desk, gleaming under my flashlight beam, weren't one, but 3 mugs. Full. Steaming. Arranged in perfect geometric symmetry. The air felt charged, heavy, like before a storm. And then came the whisper. Not from a locked room. It came from everywhere. From the walls, the ceiling, the very shadows clustering in the corners, denser than normal. An icy whisper, composed of thousands of overlapping voices, hissing a single drawn-out word, without definite origin, a word that cut the air like a blade. Stay. Terror was an icy fist squeezing my throat. I stumbled back, my shoulders colliding with the cold corridor wall. The shadows in the corners of the CEO's office seemed to vibrate, gaining texture, depth. They were no longer absence of light. They were palpable presences. Sinuous movements, almost imperceptible, like oil-slick swirls dancing on water. My body reacted before my mind. I ran. Ran like never before, down emergency stairs, the echo of my desperate footsteps mingling with the whispers that now seemed to pursue me, sliding along the smooth walls, a cacophony of hoarse, thirsty voices. Stay, stay, stay. I reached the main lobby, lit only by the bluish reception desk lights. Silence returned, abrupt, deafening. Gasping, I leaned against the cold marble counter. I looked at the security screens on the main panel. Empty. All of them. Deserted corridors. Empty rooms. Even the CEO's suite on the 18th floor looked normal, illuminated by my forgotten flashlight, showing only the imposing desk and the 3 intact mugs. No anomalous shadows. Nothing. It was then, in that post-flight silence, with the taste of blood and panic in my mouth, that the most terrifying truth hit me. It wasn't the shadows that were wrong. It was the light. The light from the cameras, the light from the lamps. It didn't quite reach them, or didn't show them. They existed between the beams, in the gaps of perception, in the corners where the human eye and the electronic lens lose focus. They were parasites of the half-light, dwellers of the threshold, and they were manifesting, feeding, on what? On my fear, on the loneliness of the place, on the latent energy of thousands of hours of corporate stress, ambition, and human desperation imprinted on those walls. The building wasn't empty. It was occupied, and the occupants were waking up. And here now, as I write this frantic account in my small custodian's room in the basement, with every noise from the AC system making my pulse spike, I realize something you, listening to me now, safe in your home, under your light, might also consider. Do you think the silence in your own home, in the dead of night, is just silence? That the shadow that moved in the hallway was just a trick of the light? That the displaced object on your shelf was forgetfulness? The world is older and darker than we imagine. They are everywhere, in the voids, in the forgotten corners, in the places where attention wavers. The Viridian Tower is just one chapter. They watch. They move things. They whisper. And the invitation, that hot coffee on a cold desk, that teddy bear in an empty chair, is always the first step. They want company. They want you to stay. My round is late. The tablet beeps, reminding me of the 10th floor. The hallway up there, according to the camera, is impeccably empty. But I know what the cameras don't show. I know what waits in the corners, where the fluorescent bulb's light doesn't fully reach, where the lens angle creates a blind spot, a small kingdom of half-light. I know the voices could start any moment, coming from a locked conference room. And I know, above all, that refusing the coffee, ignoring the teddy bear, fleeing the whispers, might only delay the inevitable. Because when the shadows decide you've seen them, truly seen them, they stop playing. They come to collect. And the door to the CEO's suite, up on the 18th floor, is slightly ajar again on my monitor. Something dark and fluid, like living tar, oozes slowly down the pale wood doorjamb, vanishing into the floor before the camera can focus. It's time for the round. My keys jingle. The building waits. The shadows do too. And this time, there's nowhere to run except deeper into them. The first time I saw Anna was on a Sunday midnight, at the loneliest stretch of Sycamore Avenue. Fine rain streaked the taxi's windows, turning streetlights into yellow ghosts. She stood under a crumbling bus shelter, no umbrella, wearing a white dress that seemed to swallow the night's darkness. Her face held a pallor that wasn't human, almost glowing in Chicago's damp fog. Something in that image made my hands sweat on the wheel before she even got in. Me, Edward. I'd driven a cab for 20 years. Knew every alley, every poorly lit block in this city. I'd hauled drunks, dealers, fleeing lovers. But nothing prepared me for when she slid into the back seat, bringing a cold scent of damp earth and withered roses. Her address came in a hoarse whisper, as if each word caused pain. St. Francis Cemetery, Plot 7, Grave 23. I asked for confirmation, disbelieving. She just nodded, black eyes fixed on the rear-view mirror, unblinking. She didn't even breathe audibly. The ride began under heavy silence. I turned off the radio out of habit, but it switched itself on. Not music, just static. Thick static, cut through by dragging whispers that slithered between the hisses. Overlapping voices, hissing incomprehensible phrases, but with an urgency that froze my neck. The temperature plummeted. The AC was off, yet my hands went numb on the wheel, and my breath turned to fog in the air. I checked the rear view. Anna remained still, staring at the road with disturbing intensity. Her reflection seemed blurred, as if light avoided her. The closer we got to the cemetery, the louder the static grew. The whispers formed almost recognizable words, always cut by noise spikes. Careful. Turn back. She. The cold seeped into my bones, a dampness not from the rain. The streets emptied, just burned-out lamps and graffiti-covered walls. The cemetery gates loomed ahead, black and ornate with faceless angels. I stopped before the locked iron bars, the taxi's engine growling in the silence. I turned to say we couldn't enter. The back seat was empty. No door opening sound. No sign. Just the void where Anna had been seconds before. On the leather seat, she'd left an object, a small oval mirror, framed in tarnished silver. When I picked it up, an icy shock shot up my arm. My reflection looked older, with sunken eyes and a look of terror. But the true horror came when I flipped the mirror. On the back, knife-carved, was my full name, Edward Miller, and a date, October 15th, 2023. 3 days in the future. I drove back to Chicago in a daze. I threw the mirror into the Chicago River off the first bridge, but its icy feel lingered on my fingers. I told my wife, Carol. She called me superstitious, blamed sleepless nights. But I saw fear in her eyes. I didn't sleep. Every street sound was the radio's whisper. Every shadow in the hall was that white dress. Fear has a taste, you know. It's metallic, like blood on the tongue, and a weight on the chest that sinks to your gut. 4 nights later, the taxi's dispatch unit beeped at 2:17 a.m. pickup address, Sycamore Avenue. Destination, St. Francis Cemetery, Plot 7, Grave 23. The name on screen, Anna. My blood froze. I switched off the unit, but it turned itself back on, insistent. The same call pulsed, red and threatening. Outside, wind howled through power lines, and I realized something you, hearing this now, should notice. Ever felt that sudden chill in an empty room? That object that moves without explanation? The world's full of doorways we don't understand. Some open by chance, and what's on the other side wants in. Now, as I write this in my cab parked in the garage, I see it in the rear view. Not the white shape, not yet. But the radio's on. Static. And between the hisses, A voice whispers my name. Edward. 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 The cold starts forming again, beginning at my feet, rising like stagnant water. The dispatch call keeps pulsing. I know what happens if I go. I know what she wants. But I also know running won't help. Because that mirror I threw in the river? I found it on my hood this morning. Clean. Intact. And the carved date is now today. The cab smells of wet soil and dead gardenias. My keys tremble in the ignition. Outside, the Chicago fog twists into long shadows. The radio whispers louder. There's no choice. All that's left is to drive. Toward Sycamore Avenue. Toward the cemetery. Toward Grave 23. And this time, I don't plan on coming back. But maybe, just maybe, I'm wrong about who the passenger really is. Because in the fogged window's reflection, for 1 second, I swear my face had the same deathly pallor as hers. And that, friends, is where the real nightmare begins. The first figure appeared at 2:17 a.m. on the food court camera of Summit Mall. My instant coffee went cold in the styrofoam cup as I watched that elongated silhouette standing motionless in front of the shuttered toy store. It wasn't human, not exactly. Its limbs bent at angles that defied logic, like a rag doll with broken joints under blacklight. My name is Robert, and monitoring overnight security cameras in Denver paid for my daughter Sophie's physical therapy sessions. Until that night, the biggest threats were rats or drunk teens hopping the fence. But that thing, that indistinct shape seeming to absorb the corridor's meager light, turned my stomach to ice. It slowly, unnaturally, turned its head and stared directly into the lens, as if it knew precisely where I was. The radio spat static into my ear when I tried to call the supervisor. When sound returned, it was only a child's laugh, high-pitched and sourceless, echoing through the empty PA system. I switched it off with trembling fingers. Returned to the screens. The food court was empty, but in the bottom corner of camera 7, near the motionless escalator, another figure appeared. Shorter. Crouched. Its outline dissolving into the gloom like smoke. My heart hammered against my ribs. I checked the motion sensors. The digital map pulsed with red alerts in deserted hallways, locked stores, the second-floor men's restroom. Places the cameras showed only static shadows. Places I knew, with a sickening, deep certainty, where they were hiding. The hours dragged like a nightmare. Every time I blinked, the figures reappeared on different screens. Always closer to the basement control room. In the electronics store window, 3 clustered, faces blurred like underexposed old photographs, pressed against the glass. On camera corridor C, 1 crawled across the ceiling, limbs twisted like a giant insect. The AC had been off for hours, yet a cave-like chill seeped through my uniform, making my teeth chatter. I called external security, Roger, the only other human for miles. The line died after 2 rings, replaced by more children's laughter, now a chorus, pouring from the speakers above my head. A joyful sound that distilled pure terror. My mind, trained to rationalize shadows and noises, began to falter. Sleep deprivation? Stress over Sophie's medical bills? Then the figure from the toy store reappeared. This time on the covered parking garage camera. Level B1. Directly outside the reinforced door leading to my back. It didn't move. Just stood there, its indistinct form flickering on the grainy feed, head tilted at an impossible angle. Watching. Always watching. The control room's motion sensor blared, a shrill beep slicing the air. The screens flickered. For an instant, every camera showed only static. When the image returned, the figures were closer. Much closer. One now pressed against the janitorial closet door, just 20 meters from my refuge. Its outline seemed more solid, more defined, as if feeding on my fear to become real. It was then, with cold sweat trickling down my neck, that I realized something you, listening to this recording right now, should consider. Ever feel that itch on the back of your neck when you're home alone? That sudden certainty something watches you from a dark hallway? Empty places are never truly empty. They just wait. And some doors, like those in that mall, shouldn't be opened after a certain hour. The world has layers we don't understand, and what dwells in those layers loves to play, especially with those who are isolated. The main alarm system screamed, an electronic wail filling the control room, bouncing off bare concrete walls. Not a breach. The panel indicated a violation at the control room door. Something was knocking, not hard. Light, irregular taps, like fingernails scratching the metal outside. The fluorescent lights flickered once, twice, and died. Only the ghostly glow of the surveillance monitors remained. Every single one showed the same scene. Figures, dozens of them, filling the hallways, the stores, the stairwells. Motionless, with that same tilted head. Watching, always watching. But now, on the camera I'd installed on the control room ceiling, I saw what made the scratching at the door. A hand. Long, with fingers too thin, joints articulated in ways that weren't human. It scraped the metal surface with horrifying patience. The laughter over the PA swelled to a crescendo, a grotesque, childish symphony seeming to come from inside the room itself. The temperature plummeted. My breath plumed white in the air. I looked at my phone's lock screen. Sophie's picture. The image flickered, my daughter's features distorting, twisting into an empty, ancient expression that didn't belong to her. The power snapped back on. The lights blinded. The screens returned to normal. Empty corridors. Dark stores. Silence. The scratching at the door stopped. For a second, I thought I'd snapped. That stress had finally broken me. But then I saw it. On the exterior corridor camera, the one exactly 3 meters from my door. She was there. The figure from the toy store. No longer an indistinct shadow. Now I saw details. A ragged, dirty old dress. Black hair covering part of a face where eyes should have been only deep, empty pits. She smiled. A wide, lipless gash stretching impossibly far. And in her long, pale hands, she clutched a teddy bear. The same bear I'd given Sophie for her last birthday, before the accident. The same one sitting in her room miles away. The radio whispered my name. Not a question. A statement. Robert. The main monitor went dark. Then the secondary. Screen by screen shut down, plunging the room into a darkness that felt solid. Only the exterior corridor camera remained lit. The figure took one step forward, then another, towards my door. The last thing I saw, before the final screen went black, was the handle of the control room door turning, slowly, from the outside. And a child's voice, sweet and rotten, pouring from the speakers above me, speaking a single word meant not for me, but for you listening. Let's play.